Okay, Juliana, tell us a little bit, where are we today?
We are in a very special place, which is my own apartment, so no one can disturb us finally.
We have our own place, which is your place, but what is yours is mine.
Obviously, and it's also our podcast studio. It's a one-room apartment. It's an office, a bedroom, a podcast studio.
Multifunctional
Yeah.
space. Are you still single since we last met? Any updates?
No updates to my status. A couple of more unsuccessful dates, but no major updates. And we're recording, I think, the last episode of the year. And we decided to wrap it up by giving some dating advice to men, I guess, but actually I think it's quite universal. But since we are dating men, we're giving them for the guys. Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, we're dating only men.
That might be the reason of all our problems.
Actually, recently we counted how many days this year we both had.
Yeah.
And Juliana is beating me. She had around 10 dates.
First dates. First dates.
I had only 3 because I was in one situationship, then another situationship. I'm a queen of situationship. And then in between I had only 3 dates, and most of them were cringe.
I couldn't believe it because I thought Dasha went on as many dates as I did, and then we were counting and Dasha's like, oh, I only went to 3. I literally went on 10 dates. 10 dates, I think it's a lot. It's also since June.
It's 10 dates in 7 months.
Yeah. But I can't say that they were successful, So here comes the advice. The first one was actually the reason why I proposed this idea to make this podcast, because I was texting with someone and I experienced the same thing as many times before, is that the guy doesn't ask a question. So they replied to a question and then that's it. And I think especially in the first times you interact, is really important that you make sure that the conversation will flow after your last reply. And to me, like, that's a big indicator. I'm actually already allergic to not having questions in the conversation from a guy. So advice number 1, make sure you include questions so the conversation can flow.
Unfortunately, this is a very common problem. And if I think about it, I recall a conversation that I once had with my friend, a male friend. I mentioned something like how exhausting and emotionally draining dating is. His reply actually stuck with me. He said he's never bored on dates because every person is interesting in their own way, and you just need to dig deeper and shift your perspective and ask unexpected questions. Treat your date like a unscripted adventure.
Solid.
So this is an advice for both men and women, because that's how you transform your boring date into something very interesting instead.
Yeah, I think you should be proactive with questions. Right questions can get the most interesting answers.
I had a very extreme example. I went on a date with a guy who was much younger than me. I don't know if I need to mention that, but he was
20 years younger.
Yeah, maybe that was the reason.
He didn't ask questions.
He didn't ask questions.
In fact, he didn't know how to speak.
So we went on a date. Immediately I felt that the vibe was not there. The date started with his monologue about how he hates his own country. Then he switched to hatred about Germany and about Germans specifically. I tried to speak up few times and he never allowed me to insert even single word. And so another time he interrupted me with a line, "Oh, sorry, I need a lighter." He left our table and I thought, okay, this is not going anywhere. 20 minutes and I'm going home. But as a polite person, I decided to stay and at least say goodbye to him. So I was waiting, scrolling my phone. And at some point, I felt that the time is passing by. He's still not there. And I'm turning and I see that he was talking to the guys from another table for at least 5 minutes.
And he was asking them questions.
And then finally, he came back took his tobacco, said sorry, and went again to the table. I swear it lasted for at least 10 minutes. Of course, I was furious. I left, never said goodbye, and then 10 minutes later, he texted me and said, "Oh, are you still around?" Dude, no.
I'm home. Yeah, but this is extreme. Like, when I heard this story, I was like, this can't be true. Who does that? He was only 12 years old, so we can forgive him. He has a very short attention span.
An excuse.
They
Yes.
probably had something shiny.
But unfortunately, he smokes already at 12 years.
If we would make a top cringe stories of the year, that would be
One of them.
first place, I think.
Thank you, I'm flattered.
What's your advice?
So I would say guys need to prioritize boundaries. And that sounds like a very obvious point, but I think it's very important to consider. Another example.
Yeah,
I'm just
that's
going,
all from the experience. So.
I'm just going date by date. As I mentioned before, they were all cringe. I went on this date with a guy and things took an unexpected turn from the beginning because he actually saw this video, that short video about me saying that I had a superpower. Like when I see a guy's profile, I already can say if the sex would be good or not. And so he took it as sign as I'm sexually interested in him.
The link is obvious.
He even said, "Oh, I'm flattered." Exactly. Actually, I just wanted to smoke a joint because I didn't have any weed. We meet, and straight away, almost straight away, he offers to go to his place to listen to some vinyls and get comfortable.
Get comfortable on my dick. Feel yourself at home.
Be my guest. And so I declined his offer. He asked why. I said that oftentimes guys misread the situation and initiate some sexual moves like touching, and I was totally not okay with that. And instead of understanding, he got into a very defensive mode, like I was the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so we arrive at the bar. Imagine what happened. Of course, he started this touching behavior. Classic.
How did it end?
I said goodbye and left the bar.
Yeah, but this is so weird, you know, like when guys think that they are the good guy and then they just don't see the behavior that they do is exactly what scares the girls and like what pushes them away.
He was sincerely sure that his touching was not sexual.
Yeah. I think many guys have a very simple picture of what is a predatory like sexual behavior, and probably they imagine like grabbing, kissing, like pulling, and very aggressive and obvious sexual acts, but actually it's so much bigger, and even a touch like this could be already inappropriate if someone showed you that they don't want to be touched. The spectrum is so much bigger.
Sometimes they also misinterpret signs in the first place. My advice would be double checking that what you're doing, what you're initiating, how you treat a girl is comfortable for her and that she feels safe. You can check that by just asking questions.
Yeah. I mean, ideally, you would read it because you have good social skills, and that's pretty obvious. Not always, but in a lot of situations you can feel it. But since I don't think a lot of guys have them, I would also advise to ask, because you can never go wrong with verbally like asking another person. Yeah, that's okay. My next one is, I was thinking about this advices and in general this dating, and I think a lot of the problems in general in dating is actually for guys and girls the same, is that people don't date intentionally and they don't choose intentionally. What I mean is that these dating apps prompt us to swipe super fast, not think about it, just 1 second per person, right and left, and in the end that leaves us with the list of people from low interest to maybe mild interest, and maybe there's like one person who was super interesting for you, but that's very rare. And what happens? You have like a mellow conversation with all of these people because you don't have enough interest and you also don't have intention towards this specific person. And why is it important? I think because when you have an intention towards the specific person and that the interest is directed to this person and not to just anyone, then you can really write a very personal text. Then you have much more attention, then you're much more consistent because your interest is very intentional. It's not spread vaguely to this list of candidates that probably you don't even want to meet. So that actually starts with intentional swiping.
Yeah.
And this is super hard. It means that you need to slow down and actually read everything in this profile and try to not swipe right or left because you had 10 bad guys before and now you see someone who is potentially okay, and then you swipe right, but in the end you realize you still not want to meet this person, but consciously and intentionally assess if that's the right match. Another thing that I wrote, for example, is to write a personal note when you swipe if the app allows it. So when you like someone, like add something, and this comes hand in hand with this intentional swiping. If you chose this person because you actually took time to assess, read their profile, understand what you like about them, so much easier to write something personal like, hey, blah, 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 and send a like with that note. And then your chances are also so much higher.
But please don't write any cringe jokes because that immediately is a no.
Yeah.
I agree in a way. At the same time, I feel like this is only applicable if you're fully acknowledging your intentions.
Mm-hmm. That's the
And-
problem, actually.
Exactly, that's a problem. That's what you probably start with, as you said. But intention at the same time could be just to have as many connections as possible.
Can be, yeah, for sure.
Then girls, you need to acknowledge that you probably want to avoid these guys.
I think we need to be specific. Like when we said advices for guys in dating, of course there could be many different dating goals. And I think we were talking more about guys who want to find a real relationship through dating. I think our advices are directed to that. Because, of course, there are guys who just want to fuck, guys who just want to stroke their ego, etc., etc. The same for girls. But I think we're like, at least I was thinking more of the guys who really want to get the girl and to date the girl.
At the same, yeah.
At the same time. At the same time too. But this goes to me as well. Like I'm also so
That's
not
what I wanted.
intentional when I swipe. I'm like, oh, and I swipe and then I swipe. Oh, how many likes did I get? It's the same for me, and that's maybe the reason why I was also not super successful. So
It's social media consumption, as scrolling through Instagram reels, just wanting to get immediate dopamine hit
Yeah.
from seeing who liked you, who wrote you a personal message, and just sharing the profiles with your
Yeah.
bestie.
But I still want to put it as an advice because I think always like replying in 2 days, not inviting you on a date, having this super slow conversations that never lead to anything, that's all a consequence of unintentional swiping and actually not realizing what you want and also not choosing the other person consciously.
I want to say that also what I consider a problem is that we usually focus on dating apps instead of expanding our possibilities and initiate opportunities outside of dating apps. In real life.
Yes. And advice from both of us to guys, please come up to girls in real life. Yes, I know it's our job to be approachable and not to have this face
Like
well,
you
I
do.
always have. It's our job to have like a friendly face and to have eye contact. Yes, yes, yes. But please, just approach. Just
Shoot your shot.
say something. Like I would so much more prefer to meet someone in real life than in a dating app. 100%.
Please, not something insulting or overly sexual. But what would be an example? What would be an approach, not in a cringe way? What would be the line that a guy could start with?
Anything situational. If you're in the coffee shop, he comes to you and he's like, hey, I've seen you before here. Is it your go-to coffee shop? I don't know. Or like, how's your food? Like, would you recommend the same? Hey, what are you reading? I'm actually looking for a new book. Anything situational.
Sounds good. Liana,
Yeah.
do you want to
Give workshops for guys?
give workshops? Yes.
Pick up workshops. Yeah, actually,
Actually.
I never seen any girl doing pick up or like dating coaching courses for guys. It's always the super buff guys who are like, yeah, you have to take a number of 100 girls today. Go.
You have to take her.
Yeah.
That sounds very legit. I think that happened to me a couple of times, but all the cases where the guy approaching me on the street and asking, "Can I take your number?" That actually a little bit scary and creepy and could make you uncomfortable immediately. So I would not recommend this approach. But situational approach sounds very plausible.
I have be proactive in planning a date in general, and I think that's so important that a guy plans the first date. Like that's my advice, because I'm also all in for taking initiative in planning dates. It doesn't mean that you always have to plan a date, blah 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 blah. But the first date, the first impression, plan it and make a good plan and be proactive and be like, hey, let's meet, and then continue with what you said. Plan a date, pick a place, invite a girl, and take care of her on this first date.
I feel like this is too much of a pressure.
First you say you want to go on a date, but then you actually go on a date, and then you actually meet. I think that's too much pressure. I think that's one step at a month.
Too much effort.
Too much effort. I think first 1 month you say you want to go, next month you maybe plan a date, and then
First you say you consider that, and then maybe you go on a date.
Yeah.
If
Take it
she's
slow.
still available.
Yeah, but she will, of course, because
Of course, because we're in Berlin.
And to continue on the dates, what I wrote is make small gentleman gestures on the date. And when I say gentleman, yeah, like some people can be like, oh, but we are not in the 18th century. I don't want to be like this typical masculine guy doing all these things, but I'm talking about the small gestures. And they make such a big difference because no one is doing them anymore.
Just very considerate ones.
Yes. Open the door. Take initiative to find a sitting place, for example. Go like proactively to a waiter, ask, take a nice seat, invite her to a nice seat. If you're paying for the date, make sure that it comes naturally so you don't have to sit with the bill there. Like, pay when she goes to the toilet. Like, these small things make such a big difference, and they cost absolutely nothing.
And I would say do these things, but don't make a big deal out of it. I mean, don't make a theatrical play around it. If you open a door, please don't say something like, "Oh, milady, please go first." Oh, ladies go first, with all these movements, you know. Exactly.
May I touch your hand?
Putting off your fedora. It's very pleasant.
It's so nice. It just makes such a big difference. It will not play the biggest role, but it will add to the overall experience. And then in the end, the girl will think, that was so nice. Like, I don't know why exactly, but I just felt so good with him, and like so safe and so pleasant. And this isn't it what you want when you bring a girl you like on a date?
Exactly. It's just speaking the love language, but in a very subtle way. Like acts of service, but very small and considerate and absolutely non-obtrusive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Advice number, I don't know, 5 or 4.
Not to mention consistent texting, because if you already started your interaction with texting every day, please don't change the rhythm of it. Otherwise, it makes her anxious. How do you feel about her? Whether
What changes?
whether you're still interested.
By default, think how your actions are making the other person feel. At least me and my friends were so anxious and like so, and do so much overthinking for small details.
Guilty.
That would be so easy to avoid with things like consistent communication. You always feel when someone is creating the distance or when someone is disappearing, And you always feel when the person is just there in the conversation, warmly letting you know that they cannot text right now. Because everyone has 1 minute a day that you can text, hey, I was just super busy today, I will text you tomorrow, I want to take some time to write you a nice message, whatever. So just consistent texting, and also in the early stages, like when you haven't gotten to this like everyday texting, you can, for example, set a date, the first date, and then you can check on her 1-2 days before the date again. You text her, you say, are we on, blah blah blah. This is also super important, I feel like. And number 1 rule, if you like the girl, text her right after the date, the same evening
true.
or next morning. Everything else, at least I consider everything else as not enough interest. Like everything else, even if you text her the next evening or the next like 1 day after, I would definitely read it as not enough interest in me. So either the same evening or the next morning.
You can also plan the next date even during the first date.
Yeah, you can like drop a line like, we're gonna do it next time, or what should we do for the next one? You don't have to be like, oh, okay, let's open our calendars and put it here, but like just make her understand that you're looking forward to the next date. It can backfire if the girl doesn't like you too much and you put in all these efforts and you put in all this consistent communication and dates planning, but it's just, I feel like it's just so easy to read as well.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not obvious. It's obvious for us, but that's why
Maybe.
we're making this podcast. As we noticed, that's absolutely not clear for guys, that you need to make active signs that you like a girl, that you want to continue, and probably even make it clear from the first date your intentions. If you're really looking for something long-term and stable, then you can mention that. You can mention that in a joking way, but just let her know. Let her know also if you're not looking for anything serious right now. That's a very important thing to consider for her. So
Yes.
if I were a guy, I would be very straightforward about that to avoid any broken heart situations.
Yes. I don't understand how some guys are able to continue the relationship when they obviously know that he is looking for something casual and she's looking for something serious, or any other constellation of the interests that don't match, but they continue and continue and continue, and they give a little bit but then they pull back a little bit, and that's where all the situationship come from. Because to me, like, this is the most uncomfortable feeling ever, that I know that someone is expecting something from me or wants something from me that I definitely know that I will not be able to give back. So if I feel that someone has more attraction to me than I have, immediately bye. Like, hey, sorry, this is why we need to stop this now. I wish guys would do the same and not just keep someone around for ages. So I just remembered one thing, and I think we never did this before, but I will do it just for this one time. I want to recommend one Instagram profile, and I'm in love because there is a guy who looks super masculine. He looks like a mom's rapper, which we say in Russian. It means like a guy that wants to look cool, and you think that he's super cringe and he will say something cringe. But the only thing he's doing, he's giving advices in every short reels video that he does, and he calls it the player move. And I think the profile is called Player Move. I'll write it here. And he gives advices to guys. He talks about this philosophy of being a player. I think that's his own term, of how to treat women, how to treat life, how to take challenges, how to be a man, basically. And I listen to every advice and I'm like, yes, finally someone is speaking up. And this is so funny because every time like he starts the video and you think that he will say like, oh, fuck as many girls as you want. But he's like, if you're with a girl, put all of your attention towards her. She is the number one important person in this moment. So don't think about your work, don't think about your life, think about your girl. I would advise guys to watch it.
Take notes. If you want Uliana to fall for you, just watch all the videos of this guy.
Yeah. Basically, we said everything we want to say. These are the advices based on our personal experience through 2024. And I think we got some good advices there. So make sure to follow the advices, follow us.
But not on the street, please.
But not on the dark street. And we see us next year.